Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS TDRIS.
Roger, nice to be in orbit.
All right, we are here live with Simon Lucas. Let me make sure that this is actually going live on the internets because I am technologically challenged, it seems. Oh, that's wrong. Okay, let me see. Can everybody see us? I've got a bot here. Everybody see us. And there's chat is going. Hi all. All right, yeah, I got some Venatas Vinco in the house. What's up, mister? Okay, so this is actually working. That's great. So I was just telling Simon, I'm really excited to have him here today. I think he does a lot of really great stuff for Pinnacle and, for gaming in general. It's good to have him on here because he's allergic to attention.
Well, thanks, Sean, for dragging me out of my shell.
Yeah. So real quick station identification. I want to welcome everybody to the Roberson Rebellion. This is your Rebel's Guide to Popular Culture and Gaming. I'm your host, Sean Owen Roberson, a.k.a. Rebel One, and I'd like to invite you to enlist in the Rebellion. Join me every week for live interactive episodes. Subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share it with your friends. Also, if you think that the content's good and you'd like to participate, please hit that notification icon. I've had a lot of people telling me how helpful that is for them to get in on the streams live, so that is awesome. Let's see. So we're going to kind of dive right into it today with this interview. I'm see how long I can keep Simon here without him running away. So this is an epic interview with Simon Lucas. He is Pinnacle Entertainment Group's very own executive producer and a good friend. In the episode here, we're going to discuss his career as well as his recent involvement with Rifts for Savage Worlds and the newest adventure edition of the Deadlands game. So, Simon, I think a lot of people don't realize how important you are. I think Shane would extol you highly in public, and I know he has before. But before we dive into how you got to be such an awesome executive producer, I would like to just kind of go over some of your background. So where are you from? Because you've got this non-American accent, and
Yeah, I'm from the UK. I'm from England. I was born in England. I grew up all over the place. My dad was in the Air Force, so we moved around a lot. And I was lucky enough to spend some time in Malta and Cyprus. So
okay,
traveled a lot.
So you're an Air Force brat, huh?
Sure am, yeah. An English one though, so it's a lot more upmarket.
Right, yeah. You drink tea and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Exclusively tea.
Right, that's it. So where did you go to school, Simon?
Again, my early schooling was all over the place because of the Air Force, but
Sure.
I went to university at it's now called the Manchester Metropolitan University, which sounds a lot grander than it is.
It sounds pretty grand.
It was I did a humanities degree, so it's American Studies and Religion was kind of what I majored in, and then after that I went to the University of Liverpool, where I was doing some investigative psychology. I was planning to get into kind of investigative profiling, but that turned out to be very expensive, and I didn't finish that. Friend of mine dragged me away. He sent me some CCG cards, and I was kind of bitten by the bug.
Oh, collectible card games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I first off, gotta say, Air Force right here, so that's cool. I didn't know you grew up around the Air Force. And then you got a degree in religion and American studies. I don't know why anyone wanted to study America, but you know.
Well, it's kind of, potted history. I figured it would be easy.
Oh, right. That's not like Chinese studies, right?
Right. Yeah. You dive in the deep end.
Yeah, no kidding, right? So, yeah, I don't know if you know, I got associates in Mandarin Chinese, and it includes the language and the culture and history. So
There's a lot of that.
there is a lot of it. They got a lot. Um, and yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So how did you get into the industry? So you started playing some collectible card games. Now, I remember from some of our earlier discussions, you said something about Games Workshop. Was that the entry point, or was it?
Oh, that's right. I've forgotten. I worked at Games Workshop between school and college, so
Okay.
I was there for a couple of years, a year and a half, something like that. But
Okay.
that was really interesting. Originally, I was intending to be I went in as like a trainee retail manager, but as part of that program, I got to move around and see the design studio and where all the casting is done and the warehouse, and so you got a good kind of overview of how everything was put together, and a lot of free minis. It's great.
Yeah, so I mean, they had that retail managers program. I applied to it, and I never heard anything back.
Well, it's the best of the best of the best.
Yeah, and then I don't know. I was in a store one day, and long story short, I had a few. Well, I had a period of time where I was in between school and school, and the store manager was like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm waiting for the next semester to start up." And he's like, "Why don't you just work here?" So next thing I knew, I was full time employee. Next thing I knew, they offered me a store and a management
Oh
position.
wow,
And
I never got the store. I left before
oh well, that was probably good too.
that.
But there were some really great people, and I really got a deep dive into things. But it was so cool. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't quite the same as going to the UK headquarters, but when I went to the Baltimore headquarters, used to be the US headquarters used to be in Baltimore, Maryland, and I went out
Right.
there and saw how they cast everything and got to run some games days, and oh, yeah, I got a ton of free minis. Vinaldo's Vinkos chatting about that. Hey, Mel Primus, Disco Corpse, good to see you guys. Um, and so yeah, I had a lot of fun with it, and I really like the rounded nature, the well-rounded nature of the hobby itself. I mean, Games Workshop Retail is a machine that grinds people into dust and chews them up for sales. But I think the Games Workshop hobby has some really cool things about it, where it's about painting and collecting and gaming and
Yeah.
sportsmanship. I really enjoyed those parts of it, and the worldwide campaigns they did, like the Armageddon campaign and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
um,
well, when I worked there, I mean, 40K was just starting, so it was a little bit before that. They hadn't refined that whole kind of the holistic approach at that point. It was still kind of transitioning from pretty much minis company and some board games. So,
okay, gotcha.
but yeah, so that was kind of my early days was playing war games and Warhammer.
And so from then you moved into the industry more, right? You got really involved after university then.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, my friend sent me some CCG cards, and I was just kind of hooked on the possibilities of all of that. And I started designing card games. And so he and I got into, we formed a company and then launched our first card game. So we kind of just self-published. That was how we started, which
Okay.
self-publishing CCG I do not recommend. Very expensive.
What was the name of the game?
It was a Judge Dredd card game.
Okay, so you started out with a nice IP then.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought so. I mean, it,
Yeah.
it didn't do as well as we needed it to do, unfortunately. But the game itself was strong. It's just it was rough market at that time. It was Pokemon craze,
Yeah,
and
that's a really tough market.
there was a lot of CCGs around at the time.
There were. I mean, some of them were good and some of them were terrible. I remember I had the bug too, and I got involved with Magic the Gathering and was very competitive. But then there all these other ones, Star Wars and Star Trek and all this other stuff started coming
Yeah.
out, and I checked a lot of them out. I don't even know if I ever saw the Judge Dredd one. There was just for a while the market was so flooded. Um, it's hard to
Well, I mean,
capture
the
everyone
Judge Dredd
now.
one was we were in the UK and we were the first UK CCG, and so the we were hoping to bring it to the States, and that was how I met Shane. Shane was importing it for us, but we ran out of money before that happened. So.
Mm-hmm. So that's how you met Shane then, was through the Judge Dredd card game and all that.
Yeah.
And that kind of just ruined the rest of your life, huh?
No,
I hope Shane
very
watches
fortunate.
this.
No, I was very, very lucky to meet up with Shane, and just we just hit it off straight away. So it was I was very fortunate.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, let's see. I know that. So with Shane, there was at some point you ran Pinnacle, right?
I did, yeah. So I started off when we kind of closed the card game down. I started off writing just D20 material, like my own stuff. I was writing like a weekly adventure series. Again, my friend and I, we just kind of plowed into making role-playing material, and then from that, I transitioned into writing some material for Shane. I finished the Rippers role-playing game, the original one for Savage Worlds.
Oh wow! So you had a big hand in the original Rippers.
Yeah. Chris Dolan wrote the original draft, and then I polished off the edges and finished some of that other stuff. But yeah, so that was kind of my first book, and then from that, I got more and more involved in kind of the more production side of it and editing, and so then I was editing pretty much everything for a few years, and then when Shane started doing well in his video game career, and he moved out to California to take that on, then I started running Pinnacle then, so that he could concentrate on working in video games.
Poor man moving out to California. I've lived there before.
Well, me too. It is expensive.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. It's gorgeous, and I met a lot of really great people. So that's. But I was also in military training at the time. I don't know if that's the best way to experience it, but yeah, my brother actually lives out there. He works for Riot. I have to interview him on the show sometime. But yeah, that's cool. So you got out there too and worked on some PC games too for a while then, right?
I did, yeah. So I moved out here in 2008. I live in Arizona now, so I moved out to Arizona in 2008, ostensibly to work on a Deadlands video game, but unfortunately that was poor timing. The economy kind of suffered a
2008
crisis.
wasn't the best time to be starting new things.
Right. I think I had landed like the day that Lehman Brothers crashed or something. It was pretty bad. Yeah, it was.
Couldn't be much worse.
I was a harbinger of doom for the economy. So
yeah.
But we managed to weather that storm, and eventually I also moved to California and started working at Cryptic, where I worked on Neverwinter video game for 7 years. So.
Yeah, that's really popular. Big popular game. What are there any other major PC games or anything that you've worked on, or is that the main thing?
No, I mean I got lucky. I landed on my feet and worked on that game for 7 years, from pre-launch through several iterations, and then through the launch and multiple releases after that.
Very cool.
Yeah, I was very lucky to stick with it for such a long time. I mean, it's published by Cryptic, and they're great at just keeping their staff and retaining talent.
That's good. That's hard to find in the industry.
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
If people don't know, I went back to school for game design and digital production of media and stuff like that. But I focused on game design, and met a lot of people from a bunch of different companies, and we had people come from like Gearbox and I think id and things like that to University of Texas at Dallas, and that's just staying in the same game for 7 years and in the same company. That's not common.
It was a good time.
So what are some of the tabletop games that you're proudest of working on, in that now period, because the past few years, I think we're about to talk about that a little more in a minute, but what are some of the other things so you worked on Rippers and you did a lot of work on that? Yeah.
I mean, Rippers is probably like that's I consider that to be kind of like my setting. That's the one that I had the largest hand in, I think. So it's pretty close to my heart. But I mean, honestly, anything that makes it to the store, to the customer, the amount of effort that goes into actually getting something finished. It's a lot of work to see something right through to the end.
It's
And so
mind-blowing, yeah.
anything that's complete, I'm incredibly proud of. It's all kind of like just to see the project through is kind of like it's hard work.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I, you see when you see a video game, a lot of people are like, "Oh, just make a video game. Why don't you just make a video game?" I'm like, "Have you
Yeah,
seen how many thousands of names are on a lot of these video
right,
games now?"
right. But
And
even something like a book, right? I
yeah,
mean,
that's what I was about
the
to get to.
scale
Yeah,
is so much smaller, and yet
and
the
yet,
hours that you pour into it.
well, and if you
It's,
look at the even like if you look at the new Savage Rifts books, right? I mean, you look at just the number of names that
I
are in
think I'm
the.
familiar with them.
I think you're a little familiar, but our
Yeah.
customers, and some of our fans might see. You look at the Savage Worlds Adventure Edition, the Suede book. You look at the new Tomorrow Legion Player's Guide, and there's a ton of names in there, and a lot of those people put in a lot of work. Some of them put in like stupid amounts of work, including you.
Well,
And
and
that's
you.
yeah, well, yeah, that too.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I think a lot of people don't realize the amount of effort that can go into a lot of this stuff, and that's part of the reason that Shane has talked to me. He's like, "Oh, you need to take on the video game industry," and I'm like, "Well, for me, it makes me a little nervous because I feel like you would lose a lot of creative control because it's already hard enough to exert. So you can only exert so much creative control as it is, right?"
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, the teams are way bigger, and so your little piece of it is perhaps smaller, but I think the end product has so much more reach, right? The number of people that you can reach with a video game, a
Sure.
big MMO or something like that, right? It's numerous times higher than the number of people who are going to see any of the books that we make. But those books are labors of love. I mean, there's a lot of effort goes into those.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the nightmare scenario, though, is, you've got something you're working on and it just never sees the light of day, right? Like,
Right.
for instance, I'm a big Fallout fan. Anybody who knows Rifts would be really surprised that I like Fallout. But if you go into this, look at the story of the original Fallout, it never should have happened, and for instance, the original Fallout 3, codename Van Buren, never came out.
Yeah.
And that's just, I don't know that would do to me. Because,
Well, it happens.
yeah,
It
yeah,
happens a lot.
yeah. And I've already seen that a little bit where you can start working on a project and then maybe it doesn't happen. But that's okay, but we have a lot of really cool stuff that we're working on, and I'm really excited about that. So let's get to the good stuff. So you used to run Pinnacle, and then you got into the games industry.
Yeah.
With Shane, and then you and Shane both moved back to Arizona.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And you
Not
guys,
at the same time.
not at the same time.
Yeah.
But I know you guys are good friends though. And at least it seems like it when we get to hang out. But yeah, so let's talk about what you've done since you came in to work as the executive producer for Pinnacle.
Yeah. I mean, coming back from California, I kind of was landed right in the deep end. I hadn't made a book for probably 7 years. I wrote the Rippers Resurrected, so that was the last thing that I really put tons of time into. And then prior to that, I did some work on the Noir Companion. But really, I hadn't written a lot, and I hadn't been that involved with it. So when I came back, Shane had just finished up the marathon Savage Worlds Adventure Edition.
Right.
And so the first thing that I did was start working on Rift, which a little project.
Tiny.
But yeah. So that was a sudden dunking in the deep end. That was
So anybody who's
kind of
listening,
a refresher. Oh yeah, these will work.
Yeah, anyone who doesn't know the background here. So I'm one of the writers on the Rifts for Savage Worlds books, and then when the Adventure Edition came out for Savage Worlds, and you got involved, and with Pinnacle again, and I was involved as an author, and Shane asked me to work on the the second edition, updating the rules to the Adventure Edition. We thought at first I was told, we think it can be just this little PDF that we release that will tell everybody, and that works for all the other settings. The PDFs are maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah, those conversion
long.
guides are great for something like Rippers, where it's really one rule book and only a handful of kind of setting rules that are different from the main rules. That works just fine.
But
Rifts is not that.
Rifts is not that, and Rifts touches everything and mixes it all together in an unholy combination. And so that ended up turning into, we need to do a second edition of Rifts and the Tomorrow Legion Player's Guide to bring all this stuff up to snuff and address all the issues. So that turned into, because we already had 3 books that we had done 3 world books, 3 almost 200-page books, because of that kind of wait for the Adventure Edition. And I think Shane made the right decision to wait until Adventure Edition was out so that the books would be fully compatible. But then that meant that we needed to do a second edition of the core rules to get it all, to really get it done right. And then we needed to update the 3 existing books, the 3 new books, and that's my fault. Is the text cursor gone now? That's my bad. And then
I tried to move it on my screen. I was like, that's not me.
Okay, yeah, it was me then. Sorry, guys, for the text cursor on Simon's face. I appreciate it. So then we decided to do, the second edition for those books, and we decided to take a bunch of the already printed material and put it into the Tomorrow Legion field manual, along with 20, 30 pages of new material that I worked up. And so that ended up being like the biggest marathon, because we'd make a change in the Tomorrow Legion Player's Guide,
and then that would cascade through everything.
And we made the mistake, the really great choice of play testing it, which the fans were awesome, I have to say. And we have a bunch of them in the chat here that were very much a part of the process. And I love you guys. Thank you. You helped make the game awesome. But that did mean that when I realized, hey, maybe something we wrote, me or whoever, right, that we'd written that wasn't the best, or the fans said, hey, we think this should be different, and we talk about it and get it done, man, that would just explode with things that need to be changed. But I think in the end, we got a really great product. So
I do too. It is a great set. Really good.
It is. I'm really happy with it. I really enjoy playing it, and never again.
Until next time.
Until next time. Third edition, right? So that's our joke, is third edition. Whenever I find something, I'm like, oh, we forgot to do this, or oh, we missed that, or there's a misprint here. Our joke is third edition. But that's gonna be a long ways off. So yeah, it was really great to have you working on that project. And I'll just tell everybody, Simon is a true professional. He's really great to work with. He really covered my back, and made sure that me, the Birchers, everyone else that had contributed to the project, he really spit shined everything that we did.
Well, now you're trying to make me blush.
But I think people need to understand, one of the things that I mentioned when I was doing the unboxing video is, the new books have on the inner pages, when you first open the book, it has these big prints.
The end papers.
The end papers have the wide printing of the cover art, so that you can see it. And I think that's just one of those gorgeous additions. There were a lot of other little things that it's hard to put your finger on, but Simon went through and took a lot of our stories or our rules and just made sure they cleaned them up, came back to me and said, hey, is that really how it's supposed to work?
It was my first time looking at Rifts at all, really, right? I was immersed in something way beyond what I really understood. So, but your passion for it kind of spoke volumes about the way fans would react, and I just wanted to make sure that we put together a book that was really special. So I really like them. I think they came out brilliantly.
I do too, and we've got fans in the chat already saying, yeah. Brandon Vrayland says, so he made you look good. He absolutely did. He made everybody look good. He made me look good. He made Sean Bircher. He made Robin Bircher. He made Sean Fannin. Everyone, there's a lot of different people that contributed to the books. It wasn't just me, and Simon definitely made us look good. I don't know why my cursor keeps going back to that screen. It's really weird.
He likes me.
Yeah, he made us look good, but he really polished up a lot of the material and made sure that it was as high quality as possible. And the books are just amazing. And you also worked a lot on the things that were printed in and produced for the Kickstarter. You ran a lot of the Kickstarter. You were the primary guy on a lot of that too.
Well, I mean, Jody carries a lot of the weight for interacting with people and setting up the shipping, which is one of the most difficult parts. I make graphics and do some writing, so I can make it look a little bit prettier. But yeah, Jody is the kind of the behind the scenes genius.
What do you think that there's a lot of things that you worked on, and I can think of a couple of things. What do you think is the biggest way that you contributed to the new books? Because we talked about, there's a lot of basically design meetings that we did, right? Where you and I would talk about certain things. Like I remember big discussions on strain and PowerPoints and how we were going to phrase that in the new edition.
It's rough, right? Because you were so immersed in it that it felt to me like my biggest contribution I could make was to try and take stuff off your plate and let you concentrate on just the breadth of stuff you had to try and figure out. And so I put it into layout for like a rough layout so that you could work in layout, and I edited some of the stuff that I knew that I could do that wasn't very very lore specific. I wasn't going to touch anything that might break canon. So I was trying to work around the edges where I could take strain off you and let you focus on the stuff that really needed to be polished up and give you that time. I mean, that was I think my biggest contribution is just kind of trying to share the load a little bit, because like you said, 7 books was a tall order, and
it was.
And we were crunching pretty hard at the end. So
we were, and I remember, so I had gone. Some people know this, some people don't. When I went back to school after the Air Force, the first thing I did was I grabbed an associate's in graphic design and visual design, which included layout and stuff like that and art. And so I knew how to use InDesign, but I mean, 192-page game rule book with tons of images and graphics is very graphics intensive, is way different than laying out a novel or even a magazine or something. So I learned a lot from you in that process, and I appreciate your patience with me when I would be like, how do I do this weird thing in InDesign?
Well, the patience is mostly me stalling while I look it up and figure it out.
I have a question here. Someone asked, Disco Corpse asked if it was the mega power modifiers. Actually, that was actually Shane wanted us to move those over to the power modifiers, right? I mean, if I remember correctly, wasn't? I mean,
if it was anything kind of technical, then it was probably not me, because like I said, this was the first thing that I had come back to after being in video games for 7 years. So yeah. I hadn't really been in on the changes for Suede, and so I was kind of still immersing myself and learning.
Shane asked for those, and Sean Bircher did the initial write-up of moving over the mega powers to mega power modifiers, and then Shane asked me to basically revamp the whole thing because he wanted it to be. We tried to keep it. I mean, Sean Bircher, when I had talked about it, and he did the lion's share of the work, but we had tried to keep it as similar as possible, right? But then Shane said, "No, I want to rebuild this from the ground up to be built on the same architecture, like theoretical architecture, as Savage Worlds." But I know that, again, strain, PowerPoints, how we phrase a lot of those things. I leaned on you a lot with how do we communicate this clearly? Where do we put it in the book? How do we organize those types of things? So
I mean,
appreciate your help.
Trying to keep some consistency in like the organization and in the way we phrase things. I'm a bit of a stickler for that, so I mean I think that helps too. But largely, I think part of it was that I wasn't so immersed. I wasn't like gonna be able to
You could
to
take a
dive
step
into
back.
every detail. It was more that I could step back and look at the 7 books as a series, and then just think things like those end papers, right? That if we'd been just immersed in it constantly, might have been overlooked. But being able to have some distance, I kind of go, oh, that would be a nice addition.
Yeah, I
So
was like the rabid beaver that you let loose, in the forest.
yeah, and especially when we were getting closer and closer to the print date, and it was like, well, we need to make a correction, but we can't change the beginning or the end of the page because it'll knock on through multiple chapters, and so it became, just kind of keeping everything in a state where it could be printed was quite an undertaking too.
Well, and we couldn't, for instance, we're doing a second edition, but we had to keep the exact same page count from the original Tomorrow Legion Player's Guide, for instance, right? So,
Right.
that's true. Mel Primus brings up the new keywords that we created, like innatability and stuff like that. So yeah, that was, and Simon had a big hand in helping to make sure that was legible and understandable by any sane reader. That
Well, let's not go too far.
more sane than most, at least saner than I. So yeah, that was a lot of fun with Riffs, and it was really great to work with you, and I feel like we bonded, during that process.
Yeah.
for better or worse on your part, but
It was a shared experience.
yeah, and now your kids know who I am, and
Yeah. They don't know who I am, but I recognize you.
But yeah, so let's get on to the next thing. So Deadlands is back, and
Yeah.
it's going great. Tons of people are going nuts over the Kickstarter. It just broke $400,000, and it's still it's still got 4 or 5 days left. So that's there's a lot of the big question is there's a lot of Savage Rifts fans that aren't really familiar with Deadlands and the Weird West, and in fact I'm not, right? So I came to, oddly enough, Savage Worlds because I wanted to play something like Rifts, and I wanted to play it with a quicker, fast, fun, furious format type game, and that's when I found Savage Worlds, and I was like, whoa, this is great. And then serendipity happened, and it was converted over.
Right.
But what is the Weird West? Why is everyone crazy over it? Can you explain that to the Rifts fans or Savage Worlds
Well, I don't
fans?
know that I can explain it, but I can describe it a little bit, I think.
Sure.
But so Deadlands is the marrying of the Wild West and some horror. So it's horror in the Wild West, and it's set around the story of the Reckoning, which was this terrible event that unleashed great evil onto the world. And then the players are traditional Western kind of tropes, but they are also, there's also the Reckoning unleashed magic into the world. So you can have blessed heroes who can call upon miracles, and hucksters who deal with devils to use cards while they're gambling to channel magic. So there's a whole bunch of kind of like weird Western stuff in there too. And the heroes are gathered together. They join up with the Twilight Legion, who are kind of like out there trying to put an end to the Reckoning and to restore good and to tamp down that evil that causes fear, which is what the Reckonings feed on. So it's that's kind of the broad overview. It's just a marriage of Western and horror games, but Rifts fans will be able to appreciate that there is decades of history in this, right? The lore is deep. So Deadlands came out originally in 1996, and it's been Pinnacle's flagship setting ever since. So there's a lot.
So it's about as old as Rifts is.
Sounds probably.
Yeah, Rifts is a little older, but I mean it's an older setting, so it's really definitely matured. I think there is something there, right? Because I mean that's what if anyone familiar with Rifts, might be a few people on this channel. The New West is a big deal, and there's a lot of horror in the New West and the rest of Rifts. That's the name of the game is all the crazy things that come out of the dimensional rifts. So I think there's something cool that a lot of Rifts fans might be able to enjoy and appreciate if they want a slight change of pace. But there's also potential for crossover characters with Savage Rifts, right? Maybe even crossover.
Well, I mean, if I learned
stories,
anything
right?
from Rifts, if I learned anything from Rifts, it's that everything exists there, right? So yeah, it's you can have Deadlands in Rifts, I'm sure. But I mean, the one of the things about Deadlands has been this epic, long-spanning storyline, right, about the Reckoners and the servitors, who are kind of like the four main characters that serve them. And over the past editions, that advancing that storyline has kind of been a key part, and that the players are fighting against these kind of incredible odds to save the world. In this new edition, it's become focuses more on local horror. So it's kind of like instead of these stories about saving the world and having the stakes be that high, it's about maybe saving this town and can I reclaim these lost people save them from the fear that's corrupting the local area. So it's a slightly different take on the Deadlands setting, but it's we're providing all of the backstory as well. So if players haven't played it and they want to get into it, they understand the setting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's funny because with Savage Rifts, for instance, the first edition was very big damn heroes, big action, and that's a great way to play, and we really wanted to preserve that in the new edition, so we added different power levels that you could see in the Game Master's Guide, but which I was proud of how much content we could make in just that little bit of space, that one chart. Well done, John. But it was great because we only had so much room.
Right.
But I think it was important for the game. But also, with this new edition, we're trying to we tried to take riffs and zoom in just a little bit closer in on those human stories, or story of a community or a town. I think that's where a lot of the gameplay can shine, and so that's cool because that means that if players did want to take some of these stories, you obviously have to pump up the level of monsters and enemies and stuff like that if you have Rift's characters fighting against them.
There's definitely a power difference there, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But that means that you can do it, and I think that there's a lot of people are going to enjoy doing it. We also in the new edition have very explicit rules for taking characters from other settings like Deadlands and bringing them right into Rifts. And so if you want your Herod or your other heroes, your Huckster or whatever, to be able to come in and participate in Rifts, and maybe then have sort of a quasi hybrid campaign where you're jumping through time to, I know there's the Deadlands Dark Ages, right, is coming, and
this is the Weird West, but Deadlands has, we just finished Lost Colony, actually, was the previous Kickstarter.
Science fiction one, right?
Yeah, that's right, set in space, and then there's also Hell on Earth, which is the kind of post-apocalyptic setting. So
right.
So yeah, Deadlands has many incarnations.
Yeah, when I saw Hell on Earth, I remember the first time I saw Hell on Earth, it was only a couple of years ago, and I was like, whoa. There's Deadlands.
That's right up your alley.
Yeah. And I had fun. I had a good time working on helping out with some of the vehicles and stuff in Lost Colony, and it's again, that's another impressive setting that I would suggest any Rifts fans go check out. Because it's the same rules, right? So even if you need to up the power level of the bad guys or good guys a little bit, that's easy. Throw them a couple of guns, add a few dice of damage or a few points to their armor or whatever. But in general, it's way easier than trying to convert something in from a completely different rules system, right?
Right.
So
that is the beauty of Savage Worlds. It has that kind of shared underpinnings that make it easier to translate from one to the next.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm taking a look at this Kickstarter, and I noticed there's a lot of really cool stuff that people can get. I see dice boxes, custom dice, cards, all types of stuff. What's going on? What can people get into?
So at its core, right? There's the core rulebook. That's all you really need, right? Core rulebook and a copy of Savage Worlds. So then the levels above that. We're adding in an extra set, the core box, which will have the dice and bennies in it, much like the Rift one, and the map, along with the screen and an adventure, and then archetype cards, power cards. So much like we offered with Rift, and very much like the Lost Colony one. And those box sets are becoming kind of like our standard size. Like the Rift's box set is the same size as the Lost Colony box. They'll be the same as the Deadlands box set. So they'll make a nice shelf appeal.
Nice.
But then beyond that level,
often that's under. I don't think that gets enough credit. When things look really good on a shelf together.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of the original Deadlands stuff, but you can tell a Deadlands player he's got the wall of orange, right? That all of the classic Deadlands with these bright orange books, and it stands out. But yeah, so then above that you have the levels for marshals, who are the GMs, and the marshal level we're adding in a box of punchboard pawns, like standees for
I
characters.
saw
So
those; they look great.
a whole bunch of ready-made miniatures that you can use. And then there's also the Headstone Hill, Horror Headstone Hill, which is the first campaign pack. And this is going to be, like I was telling you about the regional horror. This is going to be one of those. It's a setting where players can, marshals can run a setting in a county, and just everything about it's like a sandbox of that small region where they can just go in and adventure for a long time. So there's a campaign in there, but then there's also a whole bunch of other events and encounters that just let them kind of find their own way in the region. So I'm really excited by that. That one looks like it's going to be good. It's got a marshal's book and a player's book in there, and then again more cards and some nice kind of tactile handouts that we're working on, so the player has something to touch and feel. So it'll be a nice contained set.
That sounds really cool. Yeah, that looks. I mean, when I just see it, I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to see that on a store shelf. It looks really great.
Excuse me, but we just got some samples too. So they're still early, so it's just the white sample. I need to find where I am on the character, but they've just got this really slim profile. Nice. I've got a bit of a delay on the camera, so then just a slim profile that I think they'll look really, really nice alongside the main box set. But so that they'll be that shape and size, and then the pawns are the same size as well. So I think as a set they'll look really, really good.
Yeah, in just a second, if everybody, we got a lot of guys in the chat here. If you just let us know if you have any questions for Simon. Go ahead and start sending them through. There's a tad of a delay. I think I've gotten rid of most of it for the chat. But go ahead and start giving me some questions, and we'll start having Simon answer those, and I can answer those. It could be for Simon, or it could be for me and Simon. But yeah, it's really neat.
Or just Sean. I'm happy to listen.
Or just Sean, yeah. But we've got him here now, and this pretty much speak now or forever hold your peace, because I don't know if I can get him to come on another show.
Well, it hasn't killed me yet.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out too, Simon, because I know you're really busy right now with the Kickstarter and working on a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's been a blast, and it's going so well. I mean we're very grateful that it's had such support, right? It's great to see so many Deadlands fans come out and be so excited and enthusiastic. But it does mean that we're constantly working to stay ahead and make sure that we've got the stretch goals lined up and that we can actually make everything. So it's so yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I remember that with Savage Rifts was it was a very successful campaign with the new second edition, and but that means a lot of work.
Yeah, it certainly does.
But yeah, it looks good. I remember at some of the conventions I've seen those collector's edition boxes they had for the Deadlands, where it would look like a whiskey box.
Oh yeah.
Is there going to be anything like that this time?
Not in the Kickstarter. I've got a feeling we still have some of those. They might be as add-ons or something in the Pledge Manager. I'm not sure. Jody knows about those things. I don't really.
Okay.
I'm more kind of focused on what have we got to make for this one.
Okay.
So
Cool. I was just curious because I know that I've been to a lot of conventions that seem very popular. So that's always very popular. Let's see. I've got a question here from Mel Primus. He says, "What's your favorite non-spoilery element of Deadlands, like a faction, monster, whatever?"
I'm always been a fan of the Hanging Judge. It's kind of like one of the archetypal characters, monsters, right? It's one of the judges who basically, I guess maybe it's got a little bit of a Judge Death kind of feel to it from Judge Dredd from way back. So maybe that's part of what appeals to me. But they turn up and judge you basically just for being alive, and you're dead. So they kill you. The Hanging Judges are pretty cool. I have a statue of one right here. I don't know if that's going to show up too well.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Hanging Judges, iconic Deadlands.
So that's an iconic villain.
Yep. Yep, they're bad news.
We have Brandon Verheulen is asking, I think it was in The Wasted West, there was a mention of a black impenetrable rock buried deep in the ground. And it said the reckoners themselves were afraid to mess with it. It seemed to intimate that it was the devil himself was trapped in there. Any chance of that being dealt with someday in the future? Do you know anything about that? Or that sounds like some
Nope,
pretty deep
that sounds
lore.
super cool though.
It definitely sounds like Deadlands.
Yeah, Wasted West is Hell on Earth, so we are planning to redo Hell on Earth, so that'll be a Kickstarter all of its own. I dare say that it'll get touched on in the future.
Okay. Let me know if you guys, want any input.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get leaned on.
Let's see. Will servitors and other big bads be statted?
So that is, I'm not sure if we did that we usually stat the big bads. I'm not sure if I think we statted the servitors in Reloaded, which was the last book, the edition that I worked on a long time back. Generally, if you stat them, people will try and kill them. So if they're people that we don't want to be killed, we didn't use to stat them. So, but I don't know in this edition. I haven't seen the final draft. So
that's an interesting thing. I'm always surprised to see, and Palladium Books, which Riffs is a Palladium intellectual property, and that's where I kind of come from. That's my history for role playing, and they stat a lot of characters, right? And so that's always been one of those things where I was surprised when I saw Emperor Prosek, as the first statted character in the Savage Foes of North America, right? So, not that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just it's interesting because does that mean that they're more likely to be killed? But I mean, is that kind of cool? Yeah. So
because then the GM, has a sense of like, oh well, yeah, oh you killed him.
I remember that when I also played the old West End Games D6 Star Wars, and I think they had, Han Solo. I don't know if they had Darth Vader in there, but they had a bunch of the heroes, and that was interesting to see them statted out.
Right, I guess especially with something as like Star Wars, where everybody has their opinion on those characters. They're so iconic. I think statting them is just asking for people to argue with you. So
yeah. And then there's also I remember so I got into my family's really into Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And so there was the Buffy the Vampire Slayer role-playing game, which that took an interesting approach because they had the stats for the major characters every season as they progressed.
Oh, okay.
So that was kind of neat. And then the same, it was the Unis system, and then the same system was used for Army of Darkness, and Shane did that game. And
that's right.
That I always thought that game had a really cool. The Army of Darkness RPG is hilarious. It's awesome. I'm a big Army of Darkness fan, and
I might be wrong, but I think I might be a character in that game.
Really? I'm gonna have to go look through it again. I'm gonna have to look through my book.
That when you just said it, it rang a bell, but I might be.
I had a lot of fun with it. And it was funny. We crossed Buffy and Army of Darkness. Of course.
Yeah, right.
Right. I did that. I played a game, campaign with my brother and my sister, and but it was funny because in that one you go back in time to the time of Gilgamesh, right, and the early, all the early Sumerian, I think, stuff, and so you're trying to defeat the evil that the darkness from Army of Darkness, the evil dead have their root back in time, and then there's like basically time hopping, right? You're going back in time to fight something in the future, and just like the Army of Darkness movie, they go from the present into medieval England with King Arthur, and then he jumps back to now, and then there's Ash versus the Evil Dead and all that type of stuff. So I think that someone could do something similar with Deadlands, right? Once all the stuff is out, and you've got Dark Ages, and you've got Lost Colony, and you've got Hell on Earth, and you've got
and
Noir and regular Deadlands. And that seems like something that would be also very conducive to crossover with Riffs.
So I mean, I don't want to say too much because firstly, it might be something that's already planned. Secondly, it might be impossible in Deadlands to travel through time. So I'm not really sure. But I know that it has happened that people have traveled through the hunting grounds in Deadlands. So it sounds like it's plausible.
Yeah. Disco Corp says, "Oh, Eden Studios, I miss those days." And Mel Primus says, "Did you really kill Emperor Prosek, or was it an Archie plant?" Exactly, and that's the fun thing with riffs is anything's possible, right? You've got super science and super magic, so that's a lot of fun. Well, I'm not seeing a lot more questions for Simon, and I appreciate the time he's taken to join us this evening. Unless someone types up a really, a question real quick, I think we're going to let you sign off, man.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thanks. I've enjoyed being here.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. Yeah, I was surprised. So maybe I can get you to come back again.
Yeah, I'm not going to rule it out. How about that?
There we go. That's awesome. Mel Primus says, "Thanks, Simon and Sean." Okay, here we do. This is not a bad one. This is from SQ, and they haven't even said anything yet that I've seen in the chat. What established IP would you like to have touched at one point creatively? We got asked a similar question on another interview like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, and I'm a long time Star Wars fan. It'd be great to have been involved in that in any stage. But I think for role-playing games, like right now, I have young children, and they are very keen to play Harry Potter, and so Harry Potter's not a bad license either. But yeah, either of those two would be amazing.
Yeah. I remember at the time they asked me, and I forget what I said. I mean, of course, I'd love to work on something like Fallout. I'm a big Fallout nerd. I even worked on I don't know if you've played any Paradox Entertainment games like Hearts of Iron or anything like that, or Europa Universalis or Crusader Kings. But anyways, I worked on the mod for Hearts of Iron 2. That was the Fallout mod for that.
Okay.
And I even played the new one for Hearts of Iron 4, not on that team. But yeah, I love Fallout, and if I had a choice though, especially if something that would appeal to, I have a lot of nieces and nephews and stuff like that. I would love to work on like Ninja Turtles or something like that. That would be really sweet. Something that I think would be fun to just write though is I really like the new Space Battleship Yamato Star Blazers. The new Star Blazers series. I think that would be fun to write, just as I think it would be so Savage Worlds, right? It would be so Savage Worlds. You could do a lot of things that I don't think that people could do. But yeah, so SQ says he thinks it's a great answer, and he's surprised the Potterverse hasn't been expanded into a tabletop RPG. That is surprising.
Yeah, I think it's not something that she wants to happen, but I think it would be great. It would be great. I know I've seen a lot of like fan-made ones, and I know that Tracy Sizemore has run a Harry Potter game at a recent convention, so I stole her notes. I'm hoping that I can convert something to play with my children.
Is it? And I always get this wrong. Is it the Han Sector or the Han Cluster?
Han Cluster, I think.
Yeah, I think it's the Han Cluster.
Yeah.
Tracy, I was at a convention. She ran the Han Cluster, and man, that was cool. I can't wait for that one to come out because I thought that was something.
I haven't played that yet. We just finished a very low-powered supers game that she ran. It was really a lot of fun with like just barely superhero characters. So they were so limited. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that there's something fun about characters that are a little more limited, and some of the big fans for Savage Rifts might notice that and hate me or love me for it. But I dialed back the power level a little bit.
Yeah.
But in the second edition, at least the default. I mean, you can obviously just crack open your Game Master's Guide and you can crank it up to 11 easily. But I think there's something about that makes characters more human. You can get their flaws and their
right. Yeah. I mean, playing the dwarves is part of the fun of Savage Worlds for me. Is that finding characters that they're not just all superpowered. They all have something about them that's interesting to bring out and reveal something.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again for joining us and taking the time. Again, it's been great to work with you and to continue to work with you on everything. And you bring a lot to the table. So I'm glad that we got a chance to talk about it a little bit, so the fans can understand the kind of how you really brought things, have helped bring things up to the next level for a lot of products. And it's when there's such a big company. I mean, Pinnacle's not even big, right? Pinnacle's actually a pretty small company, right? But
very small company.
It's a very small company, but you still, with these projects, you can get a lot of contractors, artists, and writers.
Yeah, I mean there are
people involved.
A handful of like full-time people, just 2 or 3 full-time people, and
Right.
and then a lot of just really talented people working hard for us as well. So it's, yeah, we're very fortunate. The number of people we found, especially like the work that you've done, has been fantastic. I'm really looking forward to Atlantis and seeing how that shapes up too.
Me too. Someone was asking about Atlantis earlier. All I can say is we will do a reveal soon.
Okay.
Because we have gotten, may or may not have gotten the cover art approved. So that might or might not get teased on an episode soon.
Yeah.
So if you are interested,
I'm looking forward to learning more.
Yeah.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, and we have some other big announcements coming up too about the first 32-page expansion. So, well, anyways, thanks again, Simon. Really appreciate having you here. And we've already got some people saying that they're looking forward. They've pledged at the Ranger level.
Oh, fantastic!
So,
well, thank you everybody for backing the game. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, and I hope if you're not familiar with Deadlands, go check it out. It's really cool. There's a lot of really great stuff there, and I think that there's that any fans would pick it up for. There's a lot of different reasons to pick it up, right?
Yeah.
But even if you just want it as something that you can integrate into your new West when you're playing Rifts or
right,
whatever, there's a lot of value right there.
There's a lot to find there, yeah, for sure.
All right, cool. Well, Simon, you have a good night, and we will chat.
Thank you for having me, Sean. I've really enjoyed being on. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. The final